Now all take a look at your watches. The first church I served in Virginia had a big clock, and underneath it said, "The Enforcer." You'll notice there are no clocks visible in this sanctuary. I do, though, however, want to honor your time. And when Nikki and Mo finished, I thought to myself, I could just say what they said as my sermon. But you know what? You pay me to put some thoughts together, so you're getting it whether you want it or not. So we're working on the leading causes of life, and today we're focused on connection, but there's also coherence, there's also blessing, there's also hope, and there's also agency, which is the ability to do. And one of the things that we're looking at with the sermon series is where the focus of our energy goes, our focus and our imagination. And the author of the book, The Leading Causes of Life, has said so carefully and skillfully, if you want to look for life, quit staring at that which will kill you. And think about it when you look at the newspaper. Think about it when you go to, if you make a doctor's appointment, you don't go there for coaching on wellness. You go there because there's something wrong. We need to shift our focus from what's wrong, what's broken, what's terrible. We can't ignore it. But if we want life, we have to realize and know that life comes from life. So connection is important. I'll give you a quick way of understanding the way life sees versus the way death sees and why it matters. So I would say during the prayers of the people over the last 5 years, cancer has come up as probably the #1 reason for prayers. Can I get a witness on that? It's already been mentioned today. It's just very common. The longer we live, the more prone we are to cancer. And so death sees cancer as losses that feed fear and separation. Now, this is not a Pollyanna sermon. We know that when you get the diagnosis of cancer, sometimes you can't even say the word out loud. It's sort of the C word. Because it carries with it this whole set of assumptions about what's going to happen, what you're going to lose. And so life sees, rather than just fear and separation and what's being lost, opportunity for connection, focus on essential meaning, choices and actions to be made, hope for things that last. And why does it matter? Because a patient is still a blessing. Life language focuses on what's left, not what's lost. Quick story about my own father who was diagnosed with lung cancer. Had about a 6-month diagnosis to live because he had a terrible form of lung cancer. He lived for 1.5 years, and I saw my father change and teach me the language of life because he lived more fully in the last 1.5 years of his life, knowing that his days were numbered, knowing that he had to cherish every moment. And so he lived with this gift as opposed to, give me all the information I can have about my chances. My dad was a scientist. He didn't want to know all that stuff. He wanted to live every day as if it was his last day, and it gave him a fullness of life. So you can see that that there's kind of a deduction. You know, we're trained to really elevate this ability to think logically and to figure everything out, and thank God we're able to do that. And yet there's something about the imagination that is deeply undervalued in our culture. Ironically, if you think about it, scientists are ones who have imagination because they have a theory, and then they spend the rest of their time exploring whether that theory is actually true or not. So there's a faithfulness and a looseness that we fellow Christians can actually learn from and grow from. So congregations connect people, and the Latin word that our English religion comes from means to bind, or to connect, or to, what's the other one? Fasten. Now we all know that you can be in relationships where they're so close and so cloying and so binding that they don't have any life to them? Can I get a witness on that? We know that being bound too tight is not necessarily a good thing, but being completely separated also does not make for a healthy whole. Fasten or to bind. We come to church to be fastened or connected to God and to others. We're social creatures seeking to come together in the same way that our skin heals from a wound. Have you noticed that if the healing is happening, we're taking care of the wound, the otherness from each side grows thinner and smaller, and guess what happens to the skin that grows? It's the strongest, scar tissue is the strongest tissue known to the human body. Because of a wound and because of connection. Congregations are communities of healing. I don't really need to have any more illustrations on the Nikki story because it is so beautiful. Separate healing stories of Jesus pouring out graciousness, life, believing, touch to transform people's lives. So in Mark, the leper came to Jesus and he began pleading with him and he fell on his knees and he told him, "If you want to, you can make me clean." Filled with compassion, Jesus reached out his hand, touched the man. "I am willing," that's one translation. I like better, "I want to. I want to be clean." And immediately the leprosy left him and he was cured. Now, if we stay with our deductive, modern, scientific thought, we might dismiss this Bible story because did that really happen? Sisters and brothers, I don't even think you have to believe in the miracle to know that there are miraculous healings that happen. Because here's what happened. There was a leper. Now this is both a physical, medical condition and a religious and a cultural situation. Lepers were completely isolated and ostracized. They had no way of being connected. They were completely out of bounds. And for some good reason, because they were highly contagious. But this man had decided, I've had enough. I've lived with death, and I'm going to choose life, even if it means crawling on my knees and asking for healing. Because I believe if you can, if you will, if you want to, it'll happen. And so it did. That Jesus, by looking, even looking at the man, touching the man. Do I need to make the parallel with Nikki coming to this church, believing maybe that there was something that was not lovable about her, and it was human touch? The hug of an older woman. Note that, folks, who feel if you're getting older and you don't have any purpose anymore. Old gray-haired lady provided the hug that led to again and again and again. That is the gospel today. Not just living in a book, but when it happens, and it does still happen, healing is profoundly real. Can I get a witness on that? So there's the Jesus way, and then there's the Bethel way, which Paul wants to write to the church, the ancient church. And he says, "So those of you who have been chosen of God, holy and beloved, put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience." Stop. Those who have been chosen by God is another way of saying those who are connected to God. And if you're connected to God and you're beloved, then you have the opportunity to pass it on. And those are the spiritual fruits. Compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. And then comes forgiveness. And then comes forgiveness. We have a food cupboard. How many of you are food cupboard volunteers? How many of you have brought food to support the food cupboard? How many of you are going to bring food to support the food cupboard? As you might imagine, our food cupboard has been very busy these days. And when you are a volunteer in the food cupboard, sometimes it gets stressful because there are a bunch of people, and sometimes you know they're coming, sometimes you don't know they're coming. There might be 12 or 15 people in a household, and there are 5 or 6 families queued up, and guess what? Sometimes their first language is not English. So it can be a kind of frustrating time if you don't embody the mission of our church, which is to embody loving kindness. Remember that from 2 weeks ago? That's our mission. If you can't remember the other mission statement, remember, embody loving kindness. But it's hard to embody loving kindness, especially when you're feeling like you're on the spot, you can't do this job. And so there was an incident this week where a client really felt like they were not treated with loving kindness. And they had the courage to speak out. And here's the good news. We have a food cupboard volunteer who gets to know some of the clients who come regularly. And so this volunteer got a call from the person who felt like they weren't treated correctly. This, sisters and brothers, is the exact example of what it means for a church to value connection. Because when a church values connection, all of a sudden, we're not speaking at someone. We're not speaking to someone. We're speaking with someone, and we're walking with them. That's what leads to the causes of life. Because conflict and brokenness is going to happen. But how is it that we see? Where are we looking for life that will make it better, will heal it, will move us forward? Is that a good news story? You looking at your watches yet? 10 minutes, not bad. Go forth, sisters and brothers, embody loving kindness, and know that if you look for the causes of life, this week, focus on connection. All of the connections. You know what? The complexity of relationships actually gives our lives a richness. It might not be easy, but simplicity is overrated. Simplicity is overrated. So don't worry. Do a good job this week of practicing messy spirituality and messy faith. And in the mess, you'll see life if you look. Connection. The people were heard to say, Amen.